How's it going, guys and girls? Hope you guys are having a great week. So I'm back today with a Dragon Age Veilguard video. These are going to be my first impressions of the game. I've been playing it since it came out on the 31st of October. I've put about 16 hours into the game so far. So this isn't a full review, but I think I've played enough of the game to get a general sense of my thoughts and feelings on the game. Now, you all know I'm a massive Dragon Age fan. I love the lore. I am a lore nut. Absolutely love it. So my thoughts on this game are from that perspective of someone that is more experienced with the game, more knowledgeable on the lore, and therefore that is going to colour my impression of the game. So Dragon Age the Veilguard, as we all know, it is a continuation from Dragon Age Inquisition. It's set 10 years after the end of Trespasser DLC. The game starts off with a bit of a kind of cinematic, which is Varric narrating, and it kind of sets the scene for players in terms of who Solus is, what the Veil is and the Fade, who the Evanoris is, and ultimately why he trapped them in the Fade and why he wants to bring down the Veil and the impact this had on the Elves. So it does a pretty good job of setting the scene for newcomers to the franchise. I would say if you've never played, any Dragon Age games, you'd be perfectly fine probably to jump in, although having an understanding of the world, the lore, does help, of course, in terms of understanding the events and the stakes, at play here. But I feel it does a fairly good job of kind of setting the scene a little bit. It isn't a blow by blow of what happened in Inquisition, so I am definitely still planning to do my Dragon Age Inquisition story so far video for you all, just to give you more in-depth insight into the events of that game if you are interested, because I don't think Veilguard does a good enough job of actually breaking all of that down for you. But it gives you enough basic information. We then jump into the character creator, and of course you can choose from the 4 classes: human, elf, Kunari, dwarf, and the factions that you can pick as well. Generally, I thought the character creator was pretty good. I'm still getting used to the visual style of the characters, but actually I'm getting used to it. I'd say I'm getting used to it. I still think all the characters look really short, especially for an elf, but I am getting used to it. And you can actually make some pretty good looking characters in Veilguard, which is refreshing because, Dragon Age has always been kind of notorious for having some pretty ugly character designs. So you can actually make a really good looking character. And I have to say, I'm really pleased with the way my Rook looks. I'm really happy with her. I decided to go for an elf, a female elf, Grey Warden, and I'm playing as a warrior class. That's what I chose to go down for Veilguard, and I'm really, really happy with my Rook. I'm really happy with the voice that I chose for her as well. It's a British voice with a slight Welsh tint to it. I'm not quite sure where this person's from, but I'm definitely picking up on that a little bit.
It's not a demand, it's an offer. Telling me what I need to know, it's the smart play here.
But I'm very much enjoying, the voice actress for Rook. And yeah, I am happy with the way that she looks. I wasn't best impressed with how you could create your Inquisitor, because I found it really difficult to actually create my Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition, because obviously the facial options are different to Inquisition. The hairstyles, the hair options are different. So I found it really difficult to create an Inquisitor that looked exactly the same as they did in Dragon Age Inquisition. And even having played 15 to 20 hours worth of the game, there are definitely cameos that happen. I'm not going to say who for spoilers, but they even look different in Veilguard, and I actually didn't recognize them initially until obviously their name popped up on screen, and obviously you could hear the same voice actor or voice actress. So even familiar characters look different, although they've done a good job with Morrigan and with Solus and Varric and even Harding to a degree, who look pretty similar to Inquisition. So generally, I enjoyed the character creator. The hair looks incredible. The hair, like physics, is just insanely good in Veilguard. It looks really, really good. So I'm very much looking forward to playing it through multiple times and creating different characters in the future. But yeah, so far so good in terms of the character creator. One of the things I did have an issue with, though, is the story. The first 4 hours or so of the story, even though it starts off in a very kind of like action-packed scene in terms of you being in Minrathous and having to stop, you know, the ritual that Solus is doing, and that's what we saw in the gameplay reveal, I don't actually think that the game does a very good job in kind of setting the scene properly. It has been 10 years since the end of Trespasser leading into Veilguard, and a lot will have happened during those 10 years, and we don't really get any of that in the opening kind of segment of the game, other than to know that we are chasing down Solus and we're trying to stop his ritual. It goes horribly wrong. Solus gets pulled into the Fade, and then we're obviously, you know, creating the Veilguard, you know, our group of companions effectively, and obviously trying to stop Gillenane and Elganon, who are the two main blighted elven gods that you're facing off of. We already knew this from trailer footage, so that's not really spoiler. But for me, there are a few things like throwaway comments and throwaway statements that as a seasoned kind of Dragon Age fan and a lore nut was a little bit off-putting. So there are, I won't spoil too much, but there are a few sections where right at the beginning where the Veil Jumpers and Belara and the Dalish Veil Jumpers are talking about Elganon and Gillenane and talking about the elven gods, and they're talking about them as being, you know, these tyrannical gods that are evil, that are worse than Solus, that Solus trapped them away in the Fade, obviously, to save, you know, the elven race and all of this. And yeah, there is very much a sense of fear there.
Anything you can tell us about these gods?
Solus might be a bastard, but compared to the Avenurus, let's just say they weren't known for being kind rulers.
There's a reason Solus led a rebellion against the Avenurus, and a reason he imprisoned them.
But now they've escaped.
But I found that really jarring, because the Dalish in Inquisition and in the original trilogy, their history is very blurred. They lost much of their history, much of their culture with the fall of Alathan, with them being subjugated, you know, into slavery with the Tevinter Imperium, and then eventually splintering into the Dalish and into city elves as well. So much of their knowledge, much of their understanding of the ancient elven gods are more folktale, and their views of the elven gods are ones of benevolent beings. So to have that view, because I've played Inquisition very recently, to it being a complete 180, I found to be very, very jarring. And it kind of threw me off, because I'm like, well, how do you know all of this information? Like, what has happened in the 10 years since? Has Solus gained a following like he did in Trespasser, and these Veil Jumpers are a splinter group off of that following, you know, of Fen'Harel, of the Dread Wolf? I'm want to know more about that, and I just don't think the game does a very good job of filling that all in. It just assumes that you're going to kind of go along with it. So I found that a little bit kind of jarring, a little bit off-putting. Similarly, there are a few things even that Varric says. Obviously, you know, he's connected to the Inquisition and obviously to Hawk, but there's even one point when, like, you know, I think Rook is like, well, who could we ask to help us? Have you got any ideas, any leads? And Varric's like, yeah, I don't know anyone.
One last thing before you go. I've been racking my brain thinking of contacts who might help us with these gods.
You got any ideas?
Nothing. But being a leader isn't about having all the answers yourself. It's about knowing who does.
It's like, really? Like, what about Hawk? What about the Inquisitor? Even Harding and the Inquisitor. But obviously, because you can only carry forward 3 choices, those characters could be in any multitude of, you know, circumstances, and obviously, you know, BioWare are not going to be taking all of that into consideration for Veilguard, so I guess they're just kind of drawing a line there. There's just a few things that are disconnected for me, a few inconsistencies. Even when you first come across the Darkspawn and the Blight, I'm playing a Grey Warden, so I was expecting my Grey Warden to sense the Darkspawn even before they happened. I was very surprised how little she reacted to the fact that there were Darkspawn in the Alathan Forest. I think Balara actually reacted more than she did, and I found that really, again, off-putting because I chose a Grey Warden. So I was really surprised that they didn't sort of pull more on that, you know, in terms of maybe my Inquisitor having these dreams and these nightmares about Elganon, about Gillenane, because they are blighted, sensing the Darkspawn. That, I think, initially, because it's the opening tutorial section, everything is very generic across the board in terms of like characters reacting to things and talking on things. So I suppose they wanted that to be the same across for all classes. Thankfully, I will say, as you get further on in the story, I have noticed that I do have more faction specific dialogue. So there are certain sections, certain things that my Rook will say that very much are tied into the fact that she is a Grey Warden. There's even one bit where I can decide someone's fate and like choose to send them to the Grey Wardens as punishment, which is something that only I got access to because I was a Grey Warden. So I'm very happy to see that. So I just think the game doesn't do a good job with the first sort of 3 or 4 hours of making you feel that your decisions and who you've chosen to play as has an impact on what's happening and what you're saying. But you do definitely get that as you play further through it. I'm mixed on the story so far. Like, I'm kind of interested. I'm definitely interested and wanting to see more. Absolutely. But I feel that it hasn't really, it's not hooked me in as of yet, you know, compared to other Dragon Age games. I think sometimes with the writing, there's a little bit too much kind of over explaining. Like they do a lot of telling rather than showing. So say, for example, you know, you'll talk to Varric, for example, about, you know, what happened with Solas, and Varric obviously will respond and you can interpret what he's saying. But then to the left hand side, a little thing pops up and it's like, oh, Varric, you know, thinks this or feels this or remembers this, and it's like, yeah, well, he just said that, so I can kind of interpret that from him. I don't really need you to tell me that. So sometimes with the writing, it feels a little forced in that way, in that like they want to tell you what to think or how to feel or how to interpret something rather than letting you interpret it for yourself. Dragon Age has always been a franchise where it very much wants to make you think, and it gives you time. It has in the past given you time to really reflect on things and to breathe with moments and to think about things and interpret events, you know, which are complex and which are dark. This is a dark fantasy, but I feel that Veilguard is not doing that as much. It's you know, it's very much falling into this kind of modern storytelling that we have now of like, let me tell you what to think, let me tell you what the message is behind, you know, this or that or the other. And I don't really like that way of telling stories. I very much prefer more nuance to my storytelling. So I will say happily that happens less as you progress through the game. So I'm hoping as we get into Act 2 and Act 3 that the game's just going to let you make your own decisions on things and interpretations on things rather than telling you what to think or what to feel. I don't know whether these pop-ups are more to do with like you're making key choices and those are gonna, you know, those are gonna have an impact later, a little bit like what they do with, say, you know, Life is Strange games where they're like, oh, this character will remember this or will remember that, you know. I don't know if it's more doing it for that, but yeah, it feels a little dumbed down, and it feels a little insulting, a little bit. It's like, I don't need you to tell me what Varric has just said because I clearly listened and can interpret what his feelings or thoughts are on it. So that side of it I'm not as impressed by. I will say as well, like there is too much hand holding with the game to the point of it kind of becomes a little bit irritating. There are the odd moments when you'll be doing sort of open world exploration and suddenly your companion will sort of shout out and say, oh, there's a crystal over there that you need to shatter. And then that will allow that crystal to be shattered. And then that will open up this portal here. And then you can, switch that lever there, and that will drop down the ladder, and then you can get up and go and get that chest over there. And your companions, before you even have a chance to kind of take it all in and work out what you have to do, they will straight away say, oh, you should shoot that crystal, oh, you should do that, you should do that. It reminds me a little bit of Horizon Forbidden West, in the case of like Aloy just would never friggin' shut up, and she would be constantly like narrating, saying, oh, I should do this now, and I should do that now, and I should do the other now. I don't like that kind of thing, especially when it comes to puzzle solving. I would much prefer to spend 5 or 10 minutes myself trying to figure something out than just have an NPC tell me exactly what to do. It just takes the challenge out of it for me. I also find it a little immersion breaking, and also to a degree a little irritating. So I'm not a big fan of that. And hopefully I'm hoping that will teeter off a little bit. I'm hoping that's just the initial like tutorial-y bit where it's like, oh, let me tell you how to solve this puzzle. It's like, well, that defeats the purpose of a puzzle. And the puzzles themselves are not really that challenging. They're kind of like shoot that crystal, or take that crystal to that contraption, or turn that statue in that direction. They're not really that challenging, as puzzles go. I think Dragon Age Inquisition had better puzzles, more interesting puzzles, and more challenging puzzles. So I don't feel the need for companions to constantly tell you, what to do or how to solve things. I think you should have an option to press a button prompt if you are struggling, with something, to get a cue or to get a hint or a prompt. Sure, absolutely. But yeah, them constantly just shouting out is kind of unnecessary. So there are a few things with the game that I feel a little unsure about. However, I am still enjoying it. It's such a game that I feel so mixed on. I have such mixed feelings about Veilguard after playing 15 hours, but I am enjoying it, and I am interested in the story. Like, the more companions you meet, the more interested I'm getting in. Like, I like the companion specific quests. I think they do a really good job with them. I like the fact that there's some of their companion sort of side quests are kind of connected to the main story as well. You kind of start this main story, this thread with them through the main story, through the main quest, and then continue it on with them. And there are some very interesting side threads happening with the companions, most definitely, especially Harding's. I'm very interested in Harding's story quest that has huge ramifications for the lore, and I'm super excited to find out more about that. And I'm very excited to see where the story's going to go. At the moment, Solas is kind of relegated, as well as Varric, to be fair. Varric's more of a narrator at the moment, and Solas we stop in with every so often for a bit of intel and a bit of information. So I hope Solas will become more prominent into the story the further on you progress. Maybe into the third act he will become involved and will be there for the final fight. But in terms of positive things about the game is freaking beautiful. It is gorgeous looking. The team that did the environmental designs have truly outdone themselves. As a Dragon Age fan, it is so exciting to actually be exploring locations that we've just heard about and read about, to actually be able to go to Minrathous, to explore Minrathous and Treviso. I'm Rivain. I'm just so excited to be in these locations. We've never really traveled to the north of Thedas before. We've obviously heard about it. We've obviously heard about Tevinter. So to actually be there is really cool. And they've done a really great job in terms of these cities. They do look absolutely amazing. The only thing I would say with Minrathous and Treviso is I would have liked to have been able to actually interact with NPCs more and actually have full-on conversations and actually ask questions and get some really good lore and codex entries and lore information and world building. by talking to the people living in these cities, you can interact with certain NPCs, but they just kind of give you one-liners, and they tend to be NPCs that are connected to one of your companions that are from that area. And then of course you can interact with merchants, you know, to sell items and buy items and things like that. But I feel like the city would feel more alive if you could actually interact with more NPCs in the city. But bloody hell, these locations look absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I'm definitely, you know, interested in it, most definitely. Also in the story, I have made some key choices so far. I have yet to see how they play out and the consequences, but already I'm seeing some consequences in terms of gameplay. So you might make a certain choice, and that might mean that one of your companions is not with you for a time, or might be unhappy with you. And that actually impacts upon their progression skill tree. So you can't actually level up certain skills, or they won't even use certain skills. So they won't heal you or things like that, or they won't even be in your party for a time. So I do like the fact that there are some definite gameplay consequences to the decisions that you are making. And I hear that those decisions just get harder and more emotional the further on in the story that you get, which I'm looking forward to, but also I'm nervous about, because I always find those decisions really hard. But also that's one of the reasons I love RPGs so much, and it's one of the things I want in a BioWare game is, you know, definite consequences to your decisions. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. I am also happy that the mission structure is more linear. I think this is a better decision. I wasn't a big fan of like certain segments in Inquisition, like for example the hinterlands, which really just slowed down progression and pacing, you know, to a full stop, you know, until you had to do a little bit of grinding and side missions and fetch quests to increase your power level. I hated those sort of elements of Dragon Age Inquisition. So I'm very glad to see that that is not the case here. There are still some fairly open areas where you can do some kind of exploration for puzzles and treasures, and Alathan Forest is one of them, and also the Crossroads is a really cool, really interesting area, and I really love, there are segments in that where you actually get to re-experience some of Solas's memories, you know, during the rebellion leading up to him obviously creating the Veil, and those things, as a lore nut, those things are fascinating for me. Absolutely love them. And to see Solas with hair as well is really, really funny. But I'm really enjoying the Crossroads section in terms of exploration and different pathways and different things. The thing I'm probably enjoying the most, which I never thought I would say for a Dragon Age game, is actually the combat. I'm choosing to play as a warrior, and I'm absolutely really loving the warrior combat and gameplay. It's really fun. I think this might be the best feeling Dragon Age game that we've ever had in terms of the combat. I've always felt that Dragon Age, the combat has always felt a little janky for me, not quite there. The reason, you know, I was playing Dragon Age is for the story, is for the characters. It's never been for the gameplay, for the combat. But actually I think this might be the best the combat in Dragon Age has ever actually been. I am playing on PC with a controller, but I'm very much enjoying, you know, the light and heavy attacks. I love my shield. Oh my god, I love my shield in terms of blocking, parrying, and then the ability to throw it as a ranged weapon, and I can actually ricochet it a few times off enemies, and it just feels really satisfying to use. And then the abilities that you have as well, you do feel a little OP. I'm not gonna lie, you do feel a little OP, and it's really fun. And obviously if things do get hairy, which they can, because one of the things is enemies do tend to be quite aggressive and they will jump on your position really quickly, which is not something I'm used to in a Dragon Age game. So it's going to feel a little overwhelming initially, maybe for more seasoned players of Dragon Age. But yeah, holding down that pause screen, bringing up the wheel, just gives you a little bit of breathing space, allows you to look at enemies. And then obviously you can queue up combos, you know, with your companions, which are a lifesaver and do really work really well. Although I'm not a big fan of the visual cues for those combos and all the kind of like environmental effects for that. I would have liked a different looking like visual effect depending on what combo you're doing together, because it doesn't matter what combo you string together in terms of primer and detonator, it always looks the same in terms of the explosion. I would have preferred them to have done something more on the lines of Mass Effect, you know, where you had very definite, you know, 3 very different visual styles, whether you did a fire explosion, you know, a biotic explosion, or a technical, you know, a tech explosion. I would have liked something a little bit more like that, so it looks a little bit different, based on what that primer is, you know, whether it's a necrosis primer or fire primer or whatever it may well be. So, but yeah, using them is really key, so I do recommend them a lot. This game is very generous in terms of loot. It just keeps throwing loot at you. There are so many treasure chests, so many things to pick up along the way, that you're just going to be tripping over loot. And I do like the fact of when you get duplicates, it actually like levels up the rarity of that piece of gear, so go from like a green common to a blue rare. I like that. I think that's a really cool feature. So I hope other games implement that, and I really love it, because I hate having duplicates in my inventory and just selling them off for money. So yeah, like so far, like there's a lot that I'm enjoying about the game. There's a lot that I'm really liking about the game. I'm very much enjoying the combat, the skill progression, the loot and that side of things. The game looks visually beautiful. The world looks fabulous. It looks stunning, and they've done a really good, the look of it feels like Dragon Age. Although I will say some of the enemy designs, particularly for the Darkspawn, I still can't get on board with. It's the glowy red eyes. It just throws me off completely. They look too cartoony for me, too light for me, and Dragon Age is meant to be, you know, dark in tone, and so I am finding that you know, a little bit jarring occasionally, but not enough to spoil my enjoyment of the game. I am still very much enjoying the game. I am definitely still very much invested in the storytelling. I definitely hope there will be less hand-holding, and I hope that the story will have some depth to it, in terms of the choices and decisions that you make, and obviously your interpretation of things. I don't want the writers to dumb down anything. I don't want them to tell me what to think or tell me how to feel. I will make that my own mind up on that. This is an RPG. This is a role-playing game, so I should be able to have that as an option, and those are really my thoughts on it. So as you can tell, I have mixed feelings on it, most definitely. It isn't the 10 out of 10s it's getting. It also isn't the 4 out of 10s it's getting. A lot of the negative reviews out there, I don't understand all the hate. I'm enjoying it. It's a good game. I haven't decided how good it is yet until I finish it off, until I complete everything 100%. And I will be doing a full in-depth review of the game, absolutely 100%. But I still haven't fully made up my mind on it yet. And I'm only 15 hours in, so I've got a lot more to explore. But you can guarantee I will be doing a full deep dive review of the game, a fully scripted review of the game, to share my thoughts with you. But I wanted just to give my first impressions of Veilguard. There are some things I like, there are some things I dislike, and that's kind of how I'm feeling at the moment. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Have you played Veilguard so far? What are your thoughts after playing the game? Please do share those in the comment section below. I'll be back again with more Veilguard content, so I will be continuing to upload my playthrough of the game as we go along. And in the background, I will be working on a Dragon Age Inquisition story so far video, but I will be picking at it in the morning probably, over my 2 weeks off. So it's going to take a little time to come out, but it will be out eventually. But yes, I hope you guys, of course, enjoyed the video, enjoyed just hearing my random thoughts and tangents. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hope you guys having a great week, of course. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. I should go.